So this week we did a couple of warm-ups that were value sketches, focusing on different textures. So the first one we're going to do is a smooth texture. So I've got my little object right here that I'm going to draw. Got my shading pencils. We go 2H to 6B, even numbers only. So the first thing we have to do is start with the line drawing. And when you have an object with a smooth texture, especially if it's reflective, you want to make sure that you are drawing the highlights as well. So you got to do the line drawing first. I'll go ahead and get this outline done. Now I am doing this at school today, so if you hear any bells or announcements or anything like that, just, ignore it. Okay, so I've got a highlight here, got a bunch of highlights, honestly. There's another one here, then here and here. Then I've got one kind of right here. This one's kind of not as light as these, but I still want to draw it. And then around this edge, there's a shadow, so a nice dark shadow there. And even this is a little bit, I think it's because it's reflecting the paper around, so this is kind of light on this side. And it's kind of got a dark ring, and this is all kind of on the darker side. Okay, so now that I've got my line drawing done, I'm going to start shading. So I want to get some midtones. The pencils that we have best that do like a full range of midtones would be a 2B or a B pencil. I like using the 2B. I feel like I can get a really nice range of grays if I use a 2B. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my light value and start layering in. So this area here is actually going to be a little bit darker than this area. That's going to be a really light gray, so I want to make sure I get this value right before I move on to that lighter shade. And try to keep your marks smooth. Yes, you are going to smudge and blend them together when you finish, but you still want to keep those transitions and those marks smooth, because if you don't, it's going to be hard to blend them together. You're just going to see streaks. So try to keep them smooth. And it's okay if you switch directions as long as, you're covering up that paper in an even tone. It's kind of darker towards this edge here, so I'm going to kind of darken that up a little bit and move it lighter towards the middle. Still not quite as dark as this value is going to be, of course. But it does change a little bit. Actually a little bit of a shadow here too. Try not to shade inside those highlight areas. You want those to read as a really bright white spot. And your paper should be, nice, bright and white. So use the luminosity of the paper to make your highlights. They'll show up brighter. If you are shading over your highlights with one of the other pencils and then erasing it, they're going to be a little more cloudy, which is fine for some highlights, but for a reflective surface, you really don't want that. You want to have really bright white highlights. Okay, so I've got that first part done. Now I have to do this kind of light value here. Okay, so there's that light value, and then this is, I might switch over to a B for this one and just really have light pressure, so I'm not going to press too hard for this value here. Okay. Now I'm going to jump up to one of my darker shading pencils. So these two, 6B and 4B, are going to be your best for shading those shadows or cast shadows, core shadows, whichever one you're doing, just because they can get much darker than any of the other pencils that we have. So this is a really dark side over here. And kind of curve this around down this way. It's a little bit darker towards this side, so I'm going to darken up this line a bit, this kind of shape here, and kind of fade it out towards the edge. Alright, now that I have the object kind of shaded in, I'm going to use a blending stump to blend the shades together. Because again, with a smooth object, you want to have a smooth transition between your lights and darks. But remember, with a reflective object, so something that's shiny, the edges of your highlights need to be pretty stark. I'm going to try to buff out this edge a bit here, because while there is an edge there, I still want like a little bit of a transition, so it doesn't look like there's an actual sharp edge on this smooth round object. Because when you have harsh lines when you're shading, it makes it read that the object has an edge there. Okay, I'll probably add a little bit more value right here, so I'm just going to use a darker shading pencil and just add a little bit here. Okay, I'm just going to buff that out too. All right, last thing we got to do are the shadows. So I'm trying to decide. You don't have to do all three of them. I mean, pick one that's going to work the best. And so since I've got a shadow along this side, it makes sense to me, this shadow here. All right, so I'm going to draw that line from, looks like it's coming from the front of the edge here, and then over here. Now the reason I have so many shadows is because I'm in a room that's got a lot of lights. I don't have just one light source. So ideally, you'd want to have one light source. So you don't have, 6 different shadows. All right. So now this shadow is lighter than my object. So it needs to be slightly dark up against this, just so it'll read that there's an edge there. And then lighten up as it goes back, because I don't want it to be the same tone as this one, same shade as that. And again, you want this to be smooth. Cast shadows don't have texture. The object that they're casted on has a texture. So since the paper that the shadow is being cast on is smooth, then my shadow needs to be smooth. Okay. Now you're going to blend that out, smudge it. Kind of smudge these edges too, because shadows fade. So you want them to look like they have soft edges rather than harsh lines. And there is your smooth object.